Aviation has its own language with hundreds of aeronautical terms. As a pilot, you need to learn abbreviations, slang, acronyms, and definitions of aviation words. Today, we're going to go over some of the most important and interesting aviation terms from A to Z. Before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more aviation content. Let's get started. Some aviation terms come from French and German origin. There are even some with roots in the military, but remember, English is always the official language of aviation. Ailerons are movable, hinged flight control surfaces on the wings that are used in pairs with opposite motions to control the roll of an aircraft around the longitudinal axis. Hey, how many of you speak French? Well, now we all do. Aileron is actually a French word meaning little wing. Translated directly to English, it means fin. So, yeah, those ailerons, or fins, are little wings. ADF is the automatic direction finder in a navigation system that identifies the relative bearing of an aircraft based on a radio beacon transmitting in the MF or LF bandwidth from an NDB, a non-directional beacon. The NDB is on the ground station and the ADF is the receiver in the cockpit. ATIS, or Automatic Terminal Information Service, is a continuous broadcast of pre-recorded aviation weather and other information available to pilots around specific terminals. The information is updated hourly and broadcasts out to about 40 nautical miles. It is useful at busy airports like New Smyrna Beach because it helps reduce radio frequency congestion between pilots and controllers. Airspace includes controlled, uncontrolled, and special use airspace. We have a video that goes into airspace and you can view it here. AMT is an abbreviation for Aviation Maintenance Technician, which is another term for an aircraft mechanic. You will also hear the term A&P, which means Airframe and Power Plant Mechanic. AMT and A&P are the same thing. In addition to flight training, Epic offers an aircraft mechanic training program here in New Smyrna Beach and in Erlanger, Kentucky. That's right outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. Base leg. This is one of the legs in an airport traffic pattern. It is 90 degrees to the final approach leg to the active runway. The cabin crew are the airline staff members responsible for the safety and comfort of passengers during flight, typically the flight attendants. Hey, did you know that not just pilots are certified by the FAA? That's right, so are mechanics, flight engineers, air traffic controllers, and the cabin crew. A checkride is the more common term for the FAA practical test. Pilots must pass a checkride for each certification or rating. When students pass a checkride, they ring this bell on campus. It's a big deal. I've also heard of endorsements. Are those the same? No. For certificates and ratings, you must take a checkride with the FAA. For an endorsement, you only need to satisfy your flight instructor. The cockpit of a plane is located at the front. It contains the instrument panel, all flight controls, and, of course, the pilot's seats. Distress is an internationally recognized broadcast for danger. A distress broadcast includes the term Mayday, 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 and it means that the aircraft and the passengers are in immediate and grave danger, and immediate assistance is required. An aircraft broadcasting Mayday has priority over all other aircraft. Guess what? This is another French term. In French, it sounds like this, m'aider, which in English translates to help me. And we say Mayday. It is also associated with the SOS broadcast, which many think means save our souls. Well, that may be true, but the origin of the SOS broadcast was in Morse code. It is very easy to remember and to repeat in Morse code broadcasts. And S is ... and O is ... So, if you were to tap it out repeatedly, it would sound like this. Very distinctive over the radio. Now, in the world of GPS, WAAS, and satellite communications, we see Morse code being used less and less. Drag is a force that resists the aircraft's motion through the air. It acts parallel to and opposite the flight direction. Elevator is a smaller horizontal surface that is hinged to the larger horizontal stabilizer. The elevator controls aircraft pitch around the lateral axis. Empennage. This is another term for the tail of the aircraft. It consists of horizontal and vertical stabilizers. Voila! Empennage is another French term. M meaning in and pen meaning a feather or to feather an arrow. So, like tail feathers on an airplane, empennage. Learn more about the parts of an airplane here. Firewall is a fire-resistant bulkhead that is situated between the engine and other aircraft areas. The firewall literally keeps an engine fire in the engine compartment and away from the airframe, while the flight crew deals with the fire and returns to a safe landing. Flying dirty is an aerodynamic term. It means flying with extendable surfaces in their extended position, creating drag, such as flaps extended and landing gear out. Flying clean would mean aerodynamically streamlined or clean, with retractable surfaces retracted or in. The fuselage is the central portion of an aircraft, which is intended to house the flight crew, passengers, and cargo. It is the main structure to which are attached the wings, the empennage, landing gear, and power plants. George is a nickname given to the autopilot system. Hey, wait a minute. That's kind of interesting. How did the autopilot get the name George? Well, autopilots were just being developed and becoming useful in the 1940s. During World War II, British pilots began using autopilots and found out what a great help they were, and felt that the autopilots really took care of the flight crews. Well, during this time, King George VI was King of England, and in the same way that a king takes care of his people, the autopilot took care of the pilots, and so pilots started calling the system George, and it stuck. Another possible explanation is that it is a reference to George de Beeson, who patented the autopilot in the 1930s. Who knows? Probably a little bit of both are true. General aviation. Well, this includes flight training, charters, medevac helicopters. And what about sightseeing flights? And privately owned airplanes. And this list goes on and on. Here's an easy way to remember. General aviation includes everything except commercial air transport and the military. Glass cockpit is a term used to describe an aircraft that is fully equipped with electronic digital flight instrument displays instead of analog-style gauges. A handoff is the action taken by ATC, air traffic control, to transfer radar identification of an aircraft to another controller. Horizontal stabilizer. This is part of the empennage and provides stability to the aircraft around the lateral axis in the up and down or pitching motion of the aircraft. Hypoxia is a condition caused by low levels of oxygen in the body that can lead to dizziness or disorientation, posing extreme danger to pilots operating aircraft at high altitudes. Instrument flight rules are regulations that define aircraft operations when conducting flight by reference to instruments rather than to the outside visual horizon. Instrument flight, or IFR, can be conducted in instrument meteorological conditions, IMC, or in visual meteorological conditions, VMC. Indicated airspeed is the speed of an aircraft determined by the pitot system and displayed on the airspeed indicator, hence the term indicated airspeed. This will not be the true airspeed of the aircraft, or TAS. True airspeed takes into account additional factors. Instrument meteorological conditions, or IMC, are weather conditions that describe specific cloud heights and visibility. IMC is a situation where pilots are not able to operate using outside visual references and must fly IFR and cannot fly VFR. A jet is an aircraft propelled by one or more jet engines. The joystick is the main device that controls the aircraft. Unlike a yoke, which has more of a U-shape, a joystick is a single control stick and is mounted either on the floor and comes up between the pilot's knees, or it is mounted on the side panel. Pilots often attach a knee board to their thigh as a clipboard tool to hold notepads, iPads, charts, etc. KIAS, or knots indicated airspeed, is the aircraft's indicated airspeed that we defined just a moment ago, expressed in knots. Indicated airspeed can also be expressed in miles per hour, in which case pilots just say IAS, or indicated airspeed. Lift is the force that directly opposes all of the downward acting forces on the aircraft, including weight and downward aerodynamic forces. Lift is generated primarily by the wings. The longitudinal axis is an imaginary line that runs horizontally from the aircraft nose to the tail. Movement around the longitudinal axis is called roll. A magneto is an aircraft engine component that generates high voltage to ignite spark plugs. I wonder, is it called a magneto because it has magnets? Yes, powerful internal magnets are a key part of how the magneto works. Mean sea level is the average level of the surface of the ocean across the planet and is used as a basis for altitude measurements. Does that mean that the ocean actually has different levels across the planet? It sure does, and the average or mean is the mean sea level, or MSL. METAR is short for Meteorological Aerodrome Report. This is an hourly report of the weather at an airport. NOTAM is an abbreviation for Notices to Air Missions, formerly known as Notices to Airmen or Airwomen. These are published notices that are provided to pilots prior to flights, advising them of relevant circumstances and information concerning the flight. Operating limitations are restrictions or limits for operating the aircraft and are defined by an aircraft manufacturer, including airspeed, weight, and much more. Overshoot is when you are landing an aircraft and you touch down beyond your planned landing spot. Pilot in Command, or PIC, is the designated individual that is responsible for the safe operation of the aircraft during all phases of flight, in the air and on the ground. Pitch is the movement of an aircraft around the lateral axis, an imaginary line running from wingtip to wingtip. Pitching is the movement around this axis and is controlled by the elevator or stabilator. The Pitot Tube is a small device located on the front outside edge of an airfoil, used to measure air pressure and ultimately provide the pilot with indicated airspeed. Hey, this is interesting. Have you ever heard of Henri Pitot? He was a French engineer working in the 1700s. Henri figured out that the height of the fluid column is proportional to the square of the velocity at the fluid at the depth of the inlet to the tube. Got that? Now, well, put simply, Henri Pitot experimented with and eventually created a device that would measure the speed of flow of the River Seine, the river that runs through Paris. The tube on this device was called the Pitot Tube in his honor, and this is where the Pitot Tube on your aircraft gets its name. The propeller is a device that contains rotating blades powered by the aircraft's engine. These blades are actually airfoils that produce lift along the longitudinal axis, or horizontally rather than vertically. When lift is horizontal like this, we call it thrust. Learn about the 4 forces of flight in this video. A quadruplane is an aircraft that has 4 wings of the same size. Cinnamon roll. No, not that roll. Roll is aircraft rotation around the longitudinal axis, which runs from the nose to the tail. Roll is created and controlled by the little wings. Remember those? The ailerons. The rudder is an aircraft control surface attached to the vertical stabilizer used to control the yaw movement. Yawing is movement around the vertical axis. The runway is a defined rectangular area on a land or a water aerodrome prepared for the landing and takeoff of aircraft. Squawk is a 4-digit transponder code given to an aircraft by ATC to allow for identification of an aircraft in flight. Hey, that's cool, but why call it a squawk? Is that the sound it makes? No. This term also comes from World War II, when they developed a radar system used to identify friend or foe, known as Identification Friend or Foe, or IFF. When radar hit the aircraft, the transponder would send out a signal to identify itself as friend or foe. Now, for some super secret spy stuff. You ready? Shh. They referred to the transponder signal as a squawk because the IFF system was codenamed Parrot. Don't worry, it's all declassified. Up to this very day, pilots can use certain codes without ATC permission, known as conspicuous or conspicuity codes, such as 1200 or 1200 for VFR. Stability is a term used to describe how the airplane will act when subjected to outside disturbances such as wind gusts or turbulence. Aircraft are subject to static and dynamic stability forces along the longitudinal, lateral, and yaw axes. Stall is the condition that occurs as a result of an aircraft exceeding its critical angle of attack and therefore experiencing decreased lift. The tail is the rear aircraft structure, also known as the empennage, which provides aerodynamic stability because the tail includes the horizontal and vertical stabilizers. Thrust is a force which opposes drag and is created by the engines to propel the aircraft forward. Turbulence is the irregular motion of air resulting from eddies or from two or more vertical airflows moving past each other. These can be felt as light bumps all the way to sudden jolts, depending upon how severe the difference is between the two airflows. Hey, have you ever heard of these bumps and jolts, sometimes called air pockets? Well, there is no such thing as air pockets. It's just these air currents moving past each other. Check out this epic video that covers this topic in more detail. The trim tab is a small secondary control surface on the trailing edge of a larger primary control surface and is used to counteract the aerodynamic forces on the larger control surface. Upwind leg. This is one of the legs in an airport traffic pattern. It is parallel to the runway in the landing direction or into the wind. Flying into the wind is also known as flying upwind. UTC. This is Universal Time Coordinated, commonly called Universal Coordinated Time. It is also known as Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, and known as Zulu Time. It is the primary time standard used as a reference for other time zones around the world. By referencing how many hours you are away from the UTC time zone, pilots, dispatchers, weather forecasters, and ATC can all speak of the same relative time, even though it may be a different time of day at a different location on the planet. Urgent is a less hazardous situation than distress, and the airplane and its passengers are not in immediate and grave danger, but they soon could be. Not immediate, but priority assistance is required. An aircraft in an urgent situation will broadcast pan, 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 and has priority over all other aircraft except Mayday aircraft. Hey, this is interesting. Just like Mayday, pan also comes from the French. It comes from the French word P-A-N-N-E, pronounced pan, which means breakdown. In the early days of aviation, mechanical breakdowns were much more common than they are today. Equipment breaking in flight may not be distress, but it is urgent. So pan became pan, 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 and it stuck. It is often remembered as an acronym: possible assistance needed, or pay attention now. VFR, or Visual Flight Rules, are regulations that define aircraft operations when conducting flight by visual reference to the outside horizon. VMC, or Visual Meteorological Conditions, are weather conditions that describe specific cloud heights and visibility. VMC is a situation where pilots could operate using outside visual references and VFR rules, or they may operate using instrument references and IFR rules, so long as they stay vigilant for other traffic when they are in VMC visual conditions. Wind shear is an abrupt change in horizontal or vertical wind direction that moves past airflow moving in another direction. A cross-country flight requires detailed flight planning. Cross-country flight time is required by the FAA to earn your private pilot certificate. Cross-country means that a pilot must, number one, be flying an airplane. Number two, navigate to another airport other than the place of departure. And number three, land at that airport. If cross-country flights are to be counted toward your private pilot certificate, then there will be minimum nautical mile distances and other specifics required. Yawing is the movement of an aircraft around the vertical axis, sometimes called the yaw axis. It is characterized by the nose moving side to side. The rudder controls yaw. The yoke is the control connected to the ailerons and elevator. The yoke is used to control roll and pitch movements of the aircraft. The yoke does not connect to the rudder. Rudder pedals connect to the rudder. Zulu Time is a term synonymous with UTC, Universal Time Coordinated, which is the same thing as GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. Pilots file all flight plans in Zulu Time. Remember, this is just a taste of some of the interesting and fun and frequently used aviation terms. There are many more you will need to know as a pilot or aviation enthusiast. On our website, you'll find a page dedicated to more of these essential aviation terms. To learn even more than these terms, consider beginning your flight training here at Epic Flight Academy, so you can become an expert on all of them yourself. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more aviation content with the Epic Flight Academy.